Yeah, okay. Well, hello everyone. It's been a while since the previous video. So, we're going to get into it and we're going to start talking about basically the Eastern history of the Romans. The Roman history pops up in Jewish texts which describe pre-Rome, where lots of Romans come from. It's not just Troy. That's a simplified version because it's easier to say that. They come from places like Cyprus, according to the ancient rabbinical texts. It's absolutely extraordinary. And of course, yours truly on this channel pointed out long ago that this is very Giza-like. Are these the Aryans, the ancient, who I believe are the ancient redheads that Brian Forster talks about, coming out of the Caucasus, coming out of somewhere in the east? This is in, as we know, Sardinia, which is, as we know, was Latin-speaking. So, was it Roman? What's going on? What does the ancient Jewish history say? What does plebeian mean? What do all these ancient words mean? We're going to find that the Romans combined with ancient metal workers, according to the ancient Jewish texts, who descended from Thubul, who was Thubul Cain, who was in the Bible just before the flood. Just unbelievable. Okay, let's get into it. So, we've pointed out before on this channel that Jupiter and Yahweh is almost the same word, similar to Shiva as well. So this is an Aryan god. This is a god from the East. This is nothing to do with the Germanic mythology. This is Eastern stuff. The Romans are very Eastern. People talk about Eastern barbarism. The Romans they knew how to get things done and they didn't mess around. Everyone knows this. So, the idea that the Romans were from the East, the idea that the Romans were descended from the Trojans is very old and originated with the Greeks. Okay, so that's what someone wrote on Reddit. Now, that's not quite true. You know, they always say, oh, this originated with the Greeks, this originated with the Egyptians, this originated with them, this originated... No. These are the surviving texts, survive in this location, is what they're trying to say. Okay, let's get into it. So, Virgil describes the ancient history of Rome in his brilliant book Aeneid. I encourage all of you to read it. This is Virgil, possibly. It is the best book ever. It is a really nice book. You can see the origins of the Catholic religion. You can see so much in there. So you will learn so much by reading this book. He uses sources to come up with his own history of the Roman origins and Roman past. And basically he describes a bunch of Trojans who come over from Troy and they settle and mix with the Latins already living in Italy. Okay. So, and of course what happens in the Aeneid is that basically Aeneas comes from Troy. He takes his son. He takes his father. The women are left behind. Oh, see you later. Sorry. Oh, sorry, we can't take you. Because it appears they didn't have enough ships. This is not the Titanic. This is the men first. We don't need the women. Forget about it. We're going to a new place. We have to escape. We need to get out now. And we'll take the men. We'll find women somewhere else. Let's go somewhere else. And we've shown on this channel that the Trojan War correlates with the great migrations into America that Brian Forster talks about, out of the Caucasus. This was in the time of the Trojan War. And we've postulated on this channel that Odysseus's final sea challenge was the Straits of Magellan, just before he reaches the furthest land. Incredible. So, I encourage you to read any translation. Here we have in the Dryden translation of the Aeneid, they actually talk about the ancient megalithic blocks, which is, just fascinating. The ancient blocks are described in Piranesi. These are some English gentlemen looking at the megalithic blocks in Rome, and it appears, and the Jewish texts confirm that these are built by the descendants of Thubul, who was the metal worker before the flood. It says so in the Jewish texts. So basically it says here, then he rolled his troubled eyes around. An antique stone he saw, the common bound of neighbouring fields, the barrier of the ground. So vast, the 12 strong men of modern days, the enormous weight from earth could hardly raise. He heaved it up at a lift and poised on high, ran staggering on against his enemy, but so disordered that he scarcely knew his way, or what unwieldy weight he threw. His knocking knees are bent beneath the load, and shivering cold congeals his vital blood. So basically, look, and he drops a stone and all this. So what this is Virgil. Virgil in Roman times saying the ancient men of 1,000 years earlier could lift these great stones. They were stronger men. Interesting. So here we have Aeneas again. Aeneas, his son, maybe his father back there with the white hair, hard to say. And, oh, his thigh's wounded. A bit like the Fisher King. The Fisher King, we might talk about the Fisher King in another story. Fascinating. In Pompeii from a fresco in a house. And, of course, again, the Piranesi, we call them the Lego blocks on this channel. Like it's even almost built like a pyramid, isn't it? This is like, it's sloping downwards, almost like a descending passage, possibly, or it's flat, hard to tell. You know, it's got the pyramid angle here. This is under the theatre of Marcellus. These are apparently the poles driven into the ground. How old are they? I don't know. Is this Roman? Did the Romans build this way? Hard to say. The Romans also built with bricks and infill. They used bricks because the Greeks used bricks, apparently. Everything from the Greeks. Yep, they invented everything. No one else did. It's hard to say what's going on, how old this stuff really is, if it even still exists, if it ever existed. Oh, by the way, this kind of stuff, Tiwanaku, ancient Persia, etc., etc. Plebeians. So if these are like Easterners, they have Eastern words, and we've talked about the Aryan words. I know them from Polish. I have that background. Plebeian, what does it mean? You look up on Google. I want to know what it means. Tell me what it means, Google. Well, it means the common people, of course. But what does that actually mean? What's the origin? It doesn't say. They say, it's in Greek. It's a Greek word. It means plethos, the common people. Yeah, plethos. There we go. But in Polish, actually, I see the etymology. It's chleb. It's bread. The bread eaters. And I suspect this because it was always seen as peasant food. And the rich people, Henry VIII, I just showed you him. All these kings were always sick, gout. Why is gout? They all had diseases, couldn't walk, crippled. Both Louis XIV and Henry VIII died of possibly dietary-related illness. They just ate meat and eggs their whole life, and you need a bit of variety, you need a bit of plant food, but the plant food was seen as common, and the protein food was seen as good. So here we have, from Johann Heinrich Schoenfeld, a picture of Neptune. This was a festival of Neptune was being held while the Sabine women were being raped by the Romans, because the Romans didn't have enough women, because presumably coming out of Troy, they left the women behind because there weren't enough places on the boats, and they thought, okay, this is not the time, and this is how it was explained to me in classics. The Romans said, this is not the time for femininity. This is the time for masculinity. We need to get out of here and find a new empire. We'll just take the men. We need to just take an army. This is the founding of Rome, the martial virtue, basically. And it almost looks like a huge throne. It's quite an interesting sculpture that this German artist has invented. Quite interesting. They're taking the Sabine women. Here we have something. It's not really related, but I just wanted to show you it because this is a Roman mosaic, as it says, on a wall in the house of Neptune. And I just wanted to show you this because the color, it looks Art Nouveau, 1890s, and the color scheme is basically Victorian era, Victorian England, the Victorian era around the world. It just shows that fashions come and go, and lots of the Victorian fashions are ancient Roman fashions from the early empire. I just wanted to show you that. It could be 19th century. It's amazing. Okay, so let's get into it. So when you look up, and I saw this on Wikipedia, the rape of the Sabine women, and it talks about, in a so-called modern work, Jewish rabbinical literature, which wasn't considered modern at the time when it was first attested 1624, it actually talks and actually says that the war between the Romans and the Sabines were descended from Thubul, and the Roman Kittim. And the Kittim are Cyprus. The Romans come from Cyprus. That's what it says in the Jewish literature. And Cyprus is named after copper. They had a huge amount of copper. And a more detailed version of it's in the Sefer Yashar, and a more detailed version is found in the earlier medieval rabbinical work, Yosipon. And if the Romans, and if the Jews, some of the Jews, come from the Aryans, having a similar name of a god, Jupiter or Yahweh or whatever, you would expect the early Roman history to be in the Jewish texts, wouldn't you? Like, wouldn't you expect that? I think I would. So it's just fascinating. So and this Thubul is the Sabines, Thubul Cain. This is the man who was the forger of instruments of bronze and iron, and the Sabines in Rome are their descendants. Are they the ones who did? Are they the ones who did the well? That is that what the Jewish texts are saying? Clearly, they're saying these were technological people. That's what the texts are trying to say, trying to remember. So let's look up these texts. The Yosipon, there's something from the 1546 version of the Yosipon. It's an ancient rabbinical history. So the rabbinical works, they're called the Midrash, and there are some other books. These are things not found in the Hebrew Bible. And we're not going to get into modern debates on whether they're forgeries, whether they're not forgeries, whether they're history, whether they're not history. Fact is, it's not. None of this is history. It's legends. It's myths. It's actually myths. Legends are localized in time. Myths are not. That's how it was explained to me, the difference between myths and legends. So by someone very smart. So supposedly composed in the 10th century in southern Italy. Supposed author also Josephus Flavius. That would make it older than. That would make it contemporary with the 1st century. That would make it a bit older than the 10th century. Thing is, the 10th century, you don't get houses in Italy from the 9th century, but you do get them from the 10th century. So more survives from the 10th century than from the Dark Ages for whatever reason. Doesn't mean it was composed in the 10th century. It could survive from the 10th century, is what they're actually trying to say. But they always play it down. The academics play it down. And when you examine what they're saying, you have to assume that they're playing it down. They're minimizing it. Why do they do this? Because they have essentially they're anxious people. They're anxious about what other people think of them. So they're playing it down. Doesn't mean it's real. It just means they're playing it down. So it goes on and on and on. It was part of the Byzantine Empire. Blah blah blah, etc. It talks about Adam and it goes on and on. It talks about the first millennium BCE, legendary history of Rome and Babylon. What an incredible book. Just an incredible work. And it talks about the Romans coming out of Cyprus. Let's look at the other text. So let's look at the other one. Let's look at, so basically the Kittim. So the Kittim is what these texts refer to as the Romans, and they're coming out of Cyprus, not Troy, which is fascinating. And I actually have a bit of evidence for this. You're going to see in a moment. So basically, it says here, the account in the Yosipon is this. Okay, here we go. This is what the whole video has been about. The medieval rabbinic compilation Yosipon contains a detailed account of the Kittim. As the people spread out, it says the Kittim, these are the Romans, camped in Campania and built a city called Pozomanga, while descendants of Thubul camped in neighboring, these are the Sabines, camped in neighboring Tuscany. That would make them the Etruscans, would it not? And the Etruscans were massive, prolific builders, weren't they? Building that massive tomb of Porsenna, and built Sabino with the Tiber River as their frontier. However, they soon went to war following the rape of the Sabines by the Kittim, that is the Romans, who are correlated to the Romans. This war was ended when the Kittim showed the descendants of Thubul their mutual progeny. This is the Sabine women intervening, saying, "Oh, please stop, please, don't do this, don't fight." They then built cities called Porto, Albano, and Arasa. So these are the pre-Romans. Later, their territory was occupied by Agnias, king of Carthage. This is a king before Dido. But the Kittim, possibly, but the Kittim end up appointing Zepho son of Eliphaz, and grandson of Eshau, as their king, with the title Janus Saturnus. The first king of Rome, Romulus, is made in this account to be a distant successor of this line. A shorter, more garbled version of the history is also found in the later Sefer HaYashar. So this is in the Yosipon. So what this is unbelievable. They're saying the Romans come out of Cyprus. Is there any evidence for this? Did the Mycenaeans actually attack Cyprus? And could this have been confused with the Trojan War? And the answer is yes. So I recall reading a long time ago, Mycenaean decline, I think this is the article, Mycenaean decline in the Homeric catalogue of ships. Basically what Mr. Huxley is saying in 1956, Institute of Classical Studies, is that there are ships not being provided from Cyprus. Cyprus is a part of the Mycenaean realm. Cyprus is not providing enough tribute or not providing enough ships. And then Cyprus is subsequently sacked in Mycenaean times. And he's actually correlating, you couldn't do this in a journal article these days, but he's correlating that mythology with the sacking of Cyprus. And he's saying, was Cyprus sacked? It was suspected to have been sacked by the Mycenaeans. Was it sacked because they didn't provide enough tribute, as indicated in the catalogue of ships and in other areas? They didn't provide enough men for the Trojan War. And this sacking of Cyprus could be the history behind the Romans, some of the Romans being Cypriots fleeing Cyprus and going to live in Rome, fleeing from the east. Cyprus, of course, offshore from Byblos, Phoenicians, Baalbek, which was called Heliopolis, and then another Heliopolis to the south, which was the capital city next to the Giza pyramids. You see what I mean? It's the same people. The Sabines becoming the Etruscans, etc. These are. This is fascinating. Or being the Romans, being the Kittim. So I hope you've enjoyed that long video, but I just wanted to explain in this lecture some things I've found, and I hope you've enjoyed that and take it for what it's worth. That there is more out there than people realise. All right, thank you. A little postscript, one more thing I wanted to say. Investigating Thubul Cain from Cain. Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel, Seth. Abel's line, obviously something happened to him because his brother didn't keep him very well. And you have these two different religions, the Enochian Judaism died out. But eventually you see this lineage eventually died out. But we have the Sabines from Thubul Cain settling in Tuscany, and the Etruscan language, they say it's different. It's different. What is it? Someone said it's part Slav. I investigated this. At first I thought no, but then I thought, hang on a sec. There is a similarity. And of course, the other line survives to the present day. With the Semites, the Hamites of North Africa, and Japheth the Europeans. And these founded the Western world, while the other ones died out, whoever they were. So that's the postscript. I just wanted to show you that the fact that the Sabines are of this lineage shows that they are not these ones. And this is actually showing that the Etruscans are of this possible lineage. Anyway, just a little postscript there.